In 1790, 1,000 tons of cotton were being produced every year in the South. By 1860, it was 1,000,000 tons. In the same period, 500,000 slaves grew to 4 million. A system harried by slave rebellions and conspiracies developed a network of controls in the southern states backed by the laws, courts, armed forces, and racial prejudice of the nation's political leaders. It would take either a full-scale slave rebellion or a full-scale war to end such a deeply entrenched system. Hence, it was Abraham Lincoln who freed the slaves, not John Brown. In 1859, John Brown was hanged with federal complicity for attempting to do by small-scale violence what Lincoln would do by large-scale violence several years later. With slavery abolished by order of the government, true, a government pushed hard to do so by blacks, free and slave, and by white abolitionists, its end could be orchestrated so as to set limits to emancipation. Liberation from the top would go only so far as the interests of the dominant groups permitted. While the ending of slavery led to a reconstruction of national politics and economics, it was not a radical reconstruction, but a safe one. In fact, a profitable one. Surprise, surprise. Surprise, surprise. The plantation system based on tobacco growing in Virginia, North Carolina, and Kentucky, and rice in South Carolina expanded into lush new cotton lands in Georgia, Alabama, and Mississippi, and needed more slaves. But slave importation became illegal in 1808. Therefore, from the beginning, the law went unenforced. In other words, it was technically illegal to import slaves by 1808, but the federal government and the government at large did not enforce that law. So what do you think kept happening? The long, unprotected coast, the certain markets, and the prospects of huge profits were too much for the American merchants, and they yielded to the temptation. He estimates that perhaps 250,000 slaves were imported illegally before the Civil War. The 1932 edition of a best-selling textbook by two Northern liberal historians saw slavery as perhaps the Negro's necessary transition to civilization. Okay. Economists or cliometricians have tried to assess slavery by estimating how much money was spent on slaves for food and medical care. But can this describe the reality of slavery as it was to a human being who lived inside it? Are the conditions of slavery as important as the existence of slavery? John Little, a former slave, wrote, "They say slaves are happy because they laugh and are merry. I myself and 3 or 4 others have received 200 lashes in the day and had our feet in fetters, yet at night we would sing and dance and make others laugh at the rattling of our chains. Happy men we must have been. We did it to keep down trouble and to keep our hearts from being completely broken." That is as true as the gospel. Just look at it. Must not we have been very happy? Yet I have done it myself. I have cut capers in chains.